Well, today's show is about one thing, passion. How badly do you want it? How badly do you want your dreams to come true? Well, our guest today went to extraordinary lengths to make sure that his dreams came true, including concealing his real identity even as he became famous. For many years, the racing world knew him simply as Floyd Lippencott Jr., but who is he really? He raced iconic dragsters in the 60s and 70s, including Pulsator and Freight Train. So why did he pull a Clark Kent and not tell the world that he was really Superman? Welcome.
Wow, dramatic.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
I've been introduced many different ways, but never like that.
Yeah.
You deserve an introduction like that.
Yeah.
Well, no. We were all doing what had to be done. And I basically, how it all happened, you want to know about that?
Sure.
Okay.
By the way, we should introduce you as Floyd Lippencott Jr., but your real name is?
Bob Muravez.
There you go. We had to do the real introduction, and by the way, there was a pause because I was waiting for your cape to like.
No,
right
never,
after I said Superman, I was waiting for like Nat
no,
sound.
I never wore a cape.
Okay, all right.
Capes don't work in my thing. Fire suits, yes, but no cape.
So, Bob, welcome to West of Tulsa. We appreciate you coming. You came up from Southern California today to join us, and even
Yes.
braved a little bit of weather on the way up.
There was no weather.
So, was nothing horrible? Okay,
No,
good.
nothing
All right.
at all.
I know. Everybody's talking about it. In Southern California, people talk about a storm. Everybody freaks out. So that's why
No.
we got clouds.
No, I enjoy all the aspects of Mother Nature.
Good. Yeah,
No,
and I'm
type
sure
of
you've raced in it, and oh yeah, everything, right?
And dragsters, no.
Okay.
No, you don't type of deal. That's when you
Yeah.
put it in the barn. No, basically, I had a real good career in drag racing. I basically got involved with the Road Kings Car Club. It was my first car club meeting. It was a racing club in the 50s, started in 52. Me and a guy named Don Prudhomme were initiated a club in 1957. Hazing days. Those are the pictures you want. Because one of the members' father-in-law came home from Japan after the Second World War with a rickshaw, and they put me in a rickshaw and dressed me up as a woman. Funny for you to say that.
Do you have any photos of that? We'll throw those in there.
If
Oh,
we
okay.
had photos for that, I'd be clipping coupons at the bank. Because Prudhomme was my horsepower. He was the one pulling me around, and he was dressed in a diaper.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Imagine him in a diaper. I mean, we were 135 pound, 6 foot tall nerds, as you would call them later on. And he didn't feel too bad about it because we were in Toluca Lake and nobody knew him in Toluca Lake Bob's. And they hauled us over to Van Nuys, and that's when Don, kind of got red. But that's another story.
Wow.
Wait.
Anyway.
Don the Snake Prudhomme was in a diaper pulling a rickshaw with you in it
As a woman.
as a woman.
You can't forget that part.
That is a headline right there.
It is, but he even talked about it a little bit. If you want to read a really great book about Don, it's so real, is the book that he wrote about himself and where he came from and that. I couldn't put it down. I mean, I lived with the guy. We raced together in the same car club. Every Sunday we were at a drag strip, and every Sunday night was a club meeting, And basically in those days, people got to remember, it isn't like today where all the cars are the same. In fact, if you throw a blanket over all the cars, they're all the same. In my day, and Don's day, and the early days of drag racing, everybody had a different idea. And they would approach it that way and then race it. And if somebody come along and beat them a couple times, they would go home and build a car like it just beat them. I call it chasing horsepower. We were all a bunch of test pilots. You go out, you build a race car, you put a little horsepower in it, you learn to make more horsepower. Then the weakest link breaks. Hopefully you don't get hurt, and basically you build a better part. You're constantly changing horsepower. I did that all my life. But anyways, with the Prudhomme deal on me, so I started working for Tommy Ivo, cleaning parts, and he'd take me to the races if I did a good job. And then finally, in 1958, I partnered up with a guy named Don Gady, and we basically had a race car, and started racing that, and evolved into 60 with another car that was Kent Fuller car. And then I broke the motor, had a match race with an individual up at Half Moon Bay. It was called the Half Moon, or no, not Half Moon. It was called, I forget about it, a small Streamliner balloon Chevrolet in it. match race, and that's how I met John Peters, who worked at Ingo Camps. And loaned me a motor, come back, and I was offered that ride.
And that was kind of the beginning of how it all started for you,
Yeah,
right?
it all started, yeah. The 4-year period, and that on again, off again type of thing. And then the Quincy car, it took me about 4 months to learn the handling issue with the car, because unlike most dragsters, that had a travel in the front end of about 10 inches. And if you didn't turn left as the front end came up, which you couldn't see because you have 2 front motors in front of you, then basically it would make a hard right turn. So learning that, then got very good at that. Paul Schieffer was a sponsor of mine for my single engine car. He came along and sponsored the clutch. And that was the beginning days of the sliding clutch, where the driver grabbed the brake to control wheel spin and slid the clutch to get out and launch the car, instead of sitting there smoking the tires and finally coming out. And that was basically started driving the Quincy car, which later became the Freight Train.
I like that name.
What was the home track for you and Don? Where did you guys race most of the time?
All of them. We had 6 drag strips within a 30-minute tow. San
Wow.
Fernando,
Okay.
Lyons, San Gabriel, Fontana,
Oh man.
Ramona, any of the different places. Sometimes on a Friday night, we'd get together. Kenny Safford went on to become Sour Sisters, and then Don Gady or Ed Janke. We would leave work at night, come over the ridge route. Remember back then, too, I was just thinking about that coming up here. Big fancy freeway now. My day back then was a 3-lane highway.
Mm-hmm.
Killed more people than you want to imagine. Especially at night when the center lane was a 2-way traffic of people passing.
Oh man.
Jeez, kamikaze.
Yeah, it was. It was kamikaze type of thing.
Yeah.
Trailer and that type of thing, and slow trucks going 5 miles an hour up over the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Type of thing. But anyways, we'd leave work, go to Taft, and Taft had a small abandoned airfield, and basically race there. And the only lights were searchlights at the starting line. And if you had to work on your car in the pits, you use your own car lights. So you push start into this big old-time searchlight that was used Second World War to see airplanes in the
Wow.
sky type of deal. So you get these little starry things, little starbursts, I call them. And as you turned around, basically now your shadow becomes where you're racing into.
Jeez.
All right?
Wow.
Sounds pretty crazy.
It is. But you did it because you're out there drag racing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
my car's running about 150 miles an hour at that time.
Wow.
And as you left the starting line racing somebody, a flag start, no time, flag start type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
As the farther you got away from the light, the black hole became bigger.
Wow.
Okay? No lights at the end, the whole shop, parachute, get it out. You get through there about midnight, and then you tow up to Half Moon Bay, and when you race there until it got dark, and you'd come home and race San Fernando on Sunday.
Jeez, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
And again,
Three
no, it was
tracks.
drag racing.
Oh, I know. I just
Yeah.
compared to
Remember-
today. It's
Yeah, today it's professionals, corporate sponsors. Back then, your corporate sponsors were muffler shops, and if you look at the muffler shop, it became the speed shop.
mm-hmm.
They started
Yeah.
out selling all that kind of stuff. And that's what's so important to me, is to tell those stories about how it used to be, not today.
Yeah.
Sure. Makes sense.
I was in a speed shop a number of years ago back east, and it was such a big speed shop, about 30,000 square feet with 100,000 square foot procurement area in the back. And if you had a deep pocket, you could walk in and you could buy enough parts to build any kind of a race car, from an Indy car down to a dragster funny car, and hire somebody in the back to put it together for you.
Wow. That sounds like Gabe's dream place.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
I wish I was alive back then.
No, it's still there today. You can still go to that speed shop today. I mean, Jags and all those speed shops, that's how big they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Type of English. That's the evolving of the early days of drag racing.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself the beginning of the second generation. I knew all the major players before, the Art Christmas, the Jack Christmas, the Micky Thompsons, all the different drivers that had a different idea about things, the Chet Herbert, the Ingo Cam guys, all those kind of people I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And today, like I just showed you, basically the picture of the 1965 Micky Thompson 200-mile-an-hour meet, and there's only 9 of us left of that 49 people on that page.
Wow.
You know? So we got to talk about those
Yeah,
people.
so,
Yeah, absolutely.
so we didn't get to the, I don't want to bury the lead here.
Well, I was about to say he's at the beginning of his career now, so this would be a good time to talk about
so
the name
all this
change.
the beginning, after or when you were when Don was in a diaper and you were dressed as a woman, was this predates before Floyd was born?
Oh yeah. Floyd didn't come about. I'm sorry about that. We kind of
No worries.
So the Quincy car, we finally got into 1962. We go to Bakersfield and we win Bakersfield, which at that time we won Bakersfield like winning Indy, in any sport, Indy cars, whatever. It was the big event. So I come home, and my dad gave me a choice. He says, "Son, if you want to continue doing that, go somewhere else and work and do that. If you basically want to work here, I'll let you work here, but you'll never own the business. And then basically you can quit drag racing and own the business down the road." And so that's what I chose. And so June of '62, I retired from drag racing. I got small newspaper clippings in my collection of stuff. But anyways, so the first person I tried to teach to drive the car was a guy named Craig Breedlove. Craig and Nye Frank and John Peters all went to school together in Santa Monica, and he was starting his Bonneville record stuff with Shell and Goodyear, and the car scared him because he thought he could just jump in it and let the clutch out, but he had to learn that bump steering technique that I talked about earlier. And then he got out of the car, and then Tom McEwen, who was there, and also an angle guy. Cam families were very important. If you ran an Engel cam, all the people who ran Engel cams were kind of your pals.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically he couldn't handle it. And Micky Thompson, who ran Lions Dragster Time, incredible driver himself in many different venues, basically tried. And the last guy was a guy named Bill Alexander, who drove for Ernie Alvarado, a Glendale guy. And he was trying to make it. And as you know, back then also the drivers felt uncomfortable in cars, so the owners and builders of the cars would make it comfortable for the drivers. And this progressed with the Quincy car, and basically one day at Lions, in frustration, he said, "Bob, you couldn't drive it. We made so many changes." And so I got back in the car, incognito, in the back of the pit area. Bill hid in the push car, and I pulled the start. A nice, easy pass. Hadn't been in the car in 6 months. And basically a nice, easy pass, and down the drag strip, and pulled the parachute and got out. And I was a smoker at that time. And I used to carry my cigarettes in my leather fire suit, which you want to call a fire suit. Leather's not the thing you have in fires. But anyways, and I didn't carry matches with me because I thought that was dangerous. So I lit my cigarette off the glowing disc brake on the rear.
Wow.
That's badass.
Well, no, it's just standard operating procedure. You know what I mean? When you do it 100 times type of deal, that's what you did. So I'm sitting there, and it was late at night at the beach, about 10:30, maybe even pushing 11 o'clock. And all I could hear was the announcer saying something, and then... and the announcer would say something, and you hear another. I'm a half a mile away now, right? It's dark.
Sure.
And the smog's coming in from the beach because it's December, '62, and you get down, and everybody's kind of glum. I said, "Well, how'd you do it?" And stuff, and then we'll talk about it, right? So Bill had to get back in the seat of the car. He had to push back down into the pits, and he had to take the accolades that I had just set a new speed record, 185 miles an hour in drag racing history type of deal. Many years later, at his 50th birthday party, we had a few beers together, and he shared with me how he felt that night. How he had to take the accolades of something he didn't do. But that reinitiated my love of what I was doing. I knew all the publication people. Doris Hurt of Drag News was a friend of mine. I went to her and I said, if you could not print any picture of me without my face mask on, I could pull this off. And then all the different photographers, not like today that a have all these expensive cameras, but young guys who worked somewhere else would come there and take pictures, and they would sell those 8x10 black and whites the next weekend. I kept a lot of them in business because I bought a lot of pictures of my heroes also, type of thing. And I asked them never to take a picture. It wasn't like today where you have all these cameras being held in front of you. And we pulled it off. First race was 63 Winter Nationals. We didn't have a plan B. We ended up winning the race. And what do we do now? Well, my roommate was there, Rex Slinkard, and he was about my size, so we put a jacket on him and put him in a car and went to the starting line for the accolades of the trophy presentation. And then basically we always use John Peters' name as the local driver. In fact, if you see some old prints of the listings and that, you'll see John Peters as the driver. Then May 13th of 63, we had become the #1 top gas dragster in the nation through match racing, and that Doris Herbert had this, and we were challenged by Sneaky Pete Robinson. He come out from Atlanta and he challenged us, and at first pushed down for that match race at San Gabriel, Mel Reck, the announcer, and Steve Gibbs, who went on to become competition director for NHRA, were in the tower, and Mel put the microphone off and he says, "We got to give this guy his own name." So Steve Gibbs had a professor at college, Mount Sac, and he was going there for journalists. I think he was trying to become a journalist, whatever, write stories and that. So he had a professor named Lippencott without the E on the end, and it ended up being Floyd Lippencott. And then I added the junior later.
And the junior was just to add a little color to the name. Is that
also too, the professor's name didn't have an E on the end, and I liked the E on the end because it sounded more important to me at the time.
Wait, so you're saying that all these guys, you guys are going to these races, was everybody in on it? Everybody knew that you were in the
that's
seat,
what I was wondering.
but the public didn't know
Yeah.
who the actual driver was, but everybody at the races knew it was you driving?
Oh, it was unbelievable. That went on for 6 years. In fact, that name, Floyd, won more races than Bob.
Okay, but for the people watching who may not know the story like we do, tell us exactly why it is you had to hide.
Yes.
Well, my dad's business in that, washing machine business, he had started business in 1944. I was 6 years old at the time and started working there, and it was to take over the washing machine business. It had progressed into a business where we started manufacturing our own coin-out machines for apartment houses and built that up. We had about 15 employees and 5 trucks, a radio station for doing service calls. It wasn't like we had cell phones, and instead of going to a post office, a pay booth and buy call the shop, see any service calls and that, we had our own phone. Very highly sophisticated at the time. About 5,000, ended up being about 5,000 coin machines in apartment houses.
Wow.
Back in the early days of manufacturing. In the 70s, the manufacturers started manufacturing their own apartment-type metered machines, which was the same as a home machine with a meter on them, type of thing. And it became a very big business, very, very big business. I've always felt the washing machine business. I mean, we're sitting here with clothes on, right? Even the nudist colony, it was a customer of my father's back in the 40s.
They wash a lot of clothes at the nudist colony?
Oh, yeah, but you got to understand, these were just people that worked at the war effort. Remember, in the 40s and that, you had a lot of foreign people coming in,
Sure.
working at Lockheed. Lockheed had 28,000 to 30,000 3 times a day, change shift, working 24 hours a day in the war effort. And the Scandinavian people were not like British Americans at the time. I'll never forget that June of 49 when my mother was a converted Catholic, so religion in that, I went to all parochial and St. Finbar's and Notre Dame high school, so I had a very heavy religious background. I was even an altar boy in the masses and that, the Latin masses. And basically, my dad just warned me when we pulled up on this Saturday in June to fix the machine, and it was just a bunch of naked people playing around, washing their clothes, and they became customers of ours all the way into the 70s.
Wow.
So the racing was a hindrance to the family business?
Yes.
Okay.
And he wanted you just to make a choice, right? You
Yeah,
had
he
to
was
make this
he was
choice.
yeah, we got to remember, too, at the time, we were burying a lot of people from either over-exuberant drivers thinking they can save it, or mechanical failures. I mean, what we perfected in those days of racing, the cars that everybody drives today, is because guys like me tested in a race car. Formula One didn't even have lap belts into the 60s.
Yeah.
Because their biggest issue were fires. And they weren't on a fuss with just a lap belt.
All right.
You know, and the fire, the Nomex fires things were all perfected by drag racers.
Yeah.
Because that was our number one problem. An engine blow up, your driver sitting right behind the engine, and you fall. So fire extinguisher systems, onboard fires, that was all perfected by drag racers. You know, no other sport in the automobile. Plus, drag racing is the only automotive sport where you're on the starting line, you go full throttle the instant the green comes on. All right? Indy, all the different, they're rolling starts. You know, you put the pedal down, and basically the last car I drove was a late model top fuel car. I'm going 100 miles an hour in 60 feet and got there in less than a second. You better have your game on.
Yeah. That's
Everything
insane.
happens in a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your dad was afraid of that.
Yeah,
He was
that's
afraid. He was afraid that he had a boat. In fact, he had bought his last boat in Florida and sailed it for 9 months into the Panama Canal and home. And he didn't want to have a problem, basically finding out that one of his sons, died, in a race car accident. But he never went to the races with me, so he never who I drove for. When I started driving for John Peters and Nye Frank, they sat me down and said, look, if you don't do this, this, and this, we don't want to know you. Because their history, they already buried two of their high school buddies.
Wow.
One from a mechanical failure and one from over-exhibit thinking they could save it.
Did they eventually find out about Floyd, the true identity of Floyd?
Yeah, it was about 6 years into it, 1968, 69. My mom and dad got a divorce because my mother didn't want to be in a boat and go off somewhere. She wanted to stay home in their house and get to know her grandkids and that type of thing. I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, but my brother had 3 children and so they parted ways very equitably in that. It separated the whole device type of thing. So one night, my dad was at the Elks Club having a drink, talking to a buddy of his about the divorce, and then this man, part of his Elks Brotherhood, said, well, your son's been driving all these years, and my dad didn't believe him. So the guy goes home, and the first time my picture was out, my mask on, was I won opening day at Orange County Raceway in 67. And the program the next week come out with me with my fire suit on and face working on the car, getting ready for the next round. He gave it to my father. My father came to the shop the next day. My brother and I walked in the back door, and my dad looked at me and he said, you've been racing all these years. You're no son of mine.
Wow.
The first time I told that story was to a car club, the Cal Rods, who were helping with the NHR Museum, and they asked me to come speak about the whole issue and that. And when I did that with all the guys and their wives and that stuff, the room emptied of oxygen and went,
Yeah.
But that was my dad. My dad was a guy who kind of grew up 1907 into this country at 4 years of age. Through the roaring 20s, it was very good, into the depression of the 30s. And he was a no-nonsense kind of guy. If you talk to anybody my age, I think, about their fathers and grandfathers, they were a tough son of a guns.
Yeah.
Because what had they been through?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That would harden a few people.
Yeah.
Through the.
And what
what
about your mom? How did your mom respond?
My mother was basically, she enjoyed, in fact, one of the first races after all that. She came to the races with me, and we won that Irwindale Grand Prix, and John and Bev gave her the trophy, the big trophy for that event. And that basically sat wherever she lived, either Burbank or she went on to move into Havasu City. She had that by the front door, so anybody who walked in her space.
That's cool.
What is that? And I have that trophy.
Wow.
She was proud of you.
Yes, she was.
That's very cool.
That is
Did your dad ever come around Bob? Did he
No.
just disowned you and that's it? No, wanted nothing to do with you?
No, and even my brother was standing there. My brother was the firstborn. He was the junior.
Mm-hmm.
And back in that period of time, the first male child is always considered carrying on the family name.
Right.
And basically, he told my brother, I want you to do this, this, and this. You're going to give me the stock back. I'm going to start running a business. And my brother said no. He said, well, then you're no son of mine either.
Wow.
And then he turned around, and unbeknownst to us, he had hidden some hammers down behind the showroom area where our new machines were. And he took one, blew out the left front window of the shop, a big, huge window. Had to be 10 by 15 feet window. There was 2 of them in our front showroom. And basically, we grabbed it, and the cops came. It was a family issue type of deal. He went on to, my parents had a little bungalow in Catalina and the boat and the different property settlements. So my dad actually ended up living in Avalon for a number of years. And one time my brother was over there for a ski race, basically to the Channel Islands and to Avalon, and stopped there and walked up and said, and he told me the story. He walked up to my dad and said, "Hi, Dad, how are you?" And my brother said that he looked at him and goes, "Who are you?" He really was so intense.
Wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's like literally disowning
Wow.
to the nth degree. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, again, we all have our crosses to bear.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Type of
Right.
deal.
So was that the end of the family business, I take it?
No.
No. It kept going on.
Just kept going. In fact, I just retired out 3 years ago after 75 years and sold the property
Wow.
Wow.
and shut down the business.
Wow.
The servicemen today don't know how to diagnose things. They just throw parts at it until they get the right one.
I feel like that's like most mechanics these days now.
Yeah.
These new mechanics, they just throw parts at things without fixing things,
The good ones don't. If
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get,
yeah, which are becoming a dying breed, it seems. That's just my opinion, though.
Well, no, my opinion is I have young people ask me, what would you do? We got enough doctors, we got enough lawyers,
Yeah,
got enough others, but we need people in the trades.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
stuff. And if you have a good sense about you and a good bedside manner, I call it, where you can talk to people and they become friends with you, because your customers are your friends, especially like I did. I walked into back doors of total strangers. And when I started, service calls were like $2.50 in parts. And you walk into it, and one car went to work with a husband in the house, wife stayed home. And what did she do? She washed clothes and took care of the children. They rode bikes to school and back, little local markets and that stuff. It wasn't like today. It was a very simple life. When you have some total stranger walk in your back door to perform a service, they got their hair up on the back of their neck. I'll
Sure.
tell you one story about that. One lady, I got good at what I did with ringer machines, and one time the lady complained that I charged her too much money for the service call. I fixed her machine in about 15, 20 minutes. And so I took $1 off, so $1.50 for the service call and the parts. I don't remember where the parts were and that stuff. It wasn't very much. I come back, I give my dad the money, and he says, "You're $1 short." I said, "Yeah, him how. And that stuff. For the next week, when I got my paycheck, there was $1 missing.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So I thought to myself, I got to see him every day. I'll see her once every couple of years. So you just learn to talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm. It brings up a reoccurring theme that happens a lot since we started this show, which is we're talking about trades.
Sure.
The loss of
Right.
trades,
Talent
talent
and-
in
yeah.
trades, like promoting trades. And I feel like there needs to be a resurgence because we need these, no matter what kind of thing that technology does. You're still going to need a washing machine. You're still going to need a refrigerator. You still need a car. You still
Well, you
need
need,
this.
not only
Yeah.
that, but you need furniture.
Yeah.
Shop. I mean, the shop program in the state of California went away because of liability issues. Micky Thompson, bring him up. He basically was a pressman. He worked at the Examiner, I think it was, and his ovation of life was to be press. Through his auto shop teacher in Alhambra High School, he fell in love with cars. Okay, in his estate, and he always gave back to his auto shop program of that high school for a number of years, long after his death. I was very much involved with the man. In fact, the last picture I ever taken with him was that my wife threw me a surprise 50th birthday party, in 1988 when I turned 50 years of age. And Micky was there with his other wife, Trudy, and that stuff. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, Sharon picks up a picture and takes a picture of me and Micky. 3 days later, he's dead.
Wow.
He's gunned down by a business associate type of deal. And I was involved in the murder case and also the judge and the jury and that stuff for 19 years. Finally, we got the guy in jail.
Wow. 19 years.
But that was the whole deal. Shop programs aren't going to come back, but trade schools are starting to come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
I'm starting to see some of the smaller colleges that have gone defunct are now coming back as
Yes.
trades.
Well,
Yeah.
before that,
Trade
even
schools.
though when my kids were going to high school and had Al Teague, you might have heard his name, I call him Mr. 400, a Bonneville guy. He was a professor at Cedros College. Cerritos
College,
College and
yeah.
that stuff. And my son Michael went to class there a couple of times to teach him how to build motors and that. He was very good at his trade. Well,
And Michael, he's working in the car industry right now, from what I understand,
my
right?
son Michael, he works for Singer.
Singer, yeah, the Porsche Singer.
Porsche,
yeah. CJ knows that very well.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've been down there. Their new facility down there is amazing.
In Torrance?
Yeah, in Torrance.
That's where Michael works.
Beautiful.
Yeah, real stuff. I mean, what is it, 4 years to wait now? Michael tells us 4 years wait.
I love the Singer business proposition because they're offering the air-cooled Porsche experience with new modern conveniences and basically a brand new car, supercar level. I mean, it costs as much as a supercar now, but it's the old air-cooled Porsche with the new.
Yeah, and I like how you can get it just the way you want it.
Yeah.
Depends on how deep your pocket
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yes, that's right.
But you get to pick what you want on it, and it comes off, and
Yeah.
gorgeous cars
Then where
when
can
they're
you
done.
drive it?
Well,
If I guess you got deep enough pockets, you don't care about where you drive it, I guess.
Yeah, you've seen.
You're right.
I
you've seen
don't have that
for-
kind of pockets, so I would
Yeah.
never know what that
No,
They
is.
drive it into their garage
Yeah.
and it sits.
Yeah.
That's typical.
Yeah.
Maybe they got a set of rollers in the garage with a TV screen. I mean, one just sold a couple of weeks ago at Bear Jackson with the other companies for $950,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I know a bunch of them sold for over $1 million, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so,
it's just,
yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then Mitch Paint does all the painting for him. He's a good guy from
Yeah.
Britain. He's one of our British connections. We
Yeah.
just saw him this last week.
Yeah, gorgeous cars. Yeah. So I want to go back to the days when you were concealing your identity. I mean, I just find that so fascinating how somebody could get away from get away with that for 6 years. You're in the public eye. You're out racing. Everybody had to have known.
Yes.
So, I mean, were there any really close calls in those 6 years where you're like, "Oh, Dad's gonna find out. He's gonna find out."
No, not really, because my dad. One of the first times we went in '67, I got back with John in the Quincy car, the freight train then, and went to Bristol, Tennessee, and we won the race. And Keith Jackson from World Wire Sports was interviewing me in that, and Don Prudhomme won with the Bainey car in Bristol, and I'm thinking to myself, how the heck am I going to do this now? But my dad was always on the boat, his boat, fishing, whatever, had a television on it. So and that was when it wasn't live. It was all edited, 16 millimeter stuff. And so I just told him I needed to borrow his TV from the boat because mine had broke at home. And you got to think.
Yeah.
Come on, there's more than one way of skinning.
You're trying to stay ahead of the game here.
Yeah.
We are fortunate to be able to stay ahead of the
Yeah.
game.
So, but when they interviewed you on Wild Wilderness Sports or whatever, they interviewed as Floyd,
Oh,
correct?
Yeah.
That's
Keith
great.
and
Yeah.
Floyd were fantastic, Plus, you got to understand, the freight train at that time was an extremely popular car. And he made a comment to me. I've been trying for years to find that in the archives of Wild World of Sports. Because Prudhomme made the pass after us. We both pushed Jack down the drag strip to the cameras on the starting line. And the train in the South was extremely popular. I mean, there was 15 to 20,000 people still in the stands by the starting line to
Wow.
watch us push. And Bristol, Thunder Valley was a unique place to begin with because when you hit the throttle on the starting line, it would go into the canyon and come back at you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that must have sounded amazing.
Yeah.
It was more than amazing. It was kind of made. In fact, I think about it right now, and my body is kind of tingling just thinking
Wow.
because I remember those things.
Thunder Valley. Wow.
Type of thing. And basically, he even made mention. He said, wow. I said, there's a lot of people in there. He said, yeah, they're all a bunch of trains. They're all going, woo. Type of deal. And Buster Couch, he was a starter for NHO for a number of years, and I was a good friend of his. And every time I come to the starting line, he'd go like a pulling the train whistle.
I love that.
And even
That's
now
cool.
today. But tell you how powerful the name Lippencott was. It just dropped in my head. As the Lippencott thing died, and I'm in Indianapolis in '68, end of '68, where you need type of deal. We got beat, I think, third round. And back then, the tower at the end of the drag strip, the stands all kind of ended up, and we had to push back the tower, stop, and the car had to reconnect to push you. You didn't tow it back, you pushed back. And the stands at that point were up about 8 or 9 feet up, and it was loaded with people. And there was 2 young kids there. And as I'm getting John to come in behind me to push me and connect with me and that stuff, 2 kids. Remember, this is when I'm Bob Muravez. Floyd was gone out of the picture. And 2 kids up there, since I lost, said, we want Lippencott. We want Lippencott.
Wow.
Okay?
I was curious because that when you were talking, I was thinking about that. So after your dad figured this out, you changed and went to Bob.
Yeah. Floyd retired.
Floyd retired.
Wow.
Okay. And so how long did you race under Bob?
They closed out Top Gas in '71, NHRA last one. AHRA and IHRA closed out in '70 because at that time drag racing was going from a non-professional sportsman type race, if you want to call it that, to and already the touring professionals were all out there in that. But NHRA decided to have 3 classes: Top Fuel, Funny Car had come around, and Pro Stock because of the factories and that. And then later on, they added a stepping stone classes called alcohol dragsters and alcohol funny cars, which were the stepping stones of the people going to that class, then going to the main show.
Mm-hmm.
Where sponsorship came on board, etc. And that's where it all changed.
And that's you decided to get out of it. You just didn't want to take it to that level.
No, we were upset because we were at the top of the heap.
Mm-hmm.
How dare they take a class away that we were dominating and making a good living at? And they wanted us to do handicap racing. Sportsman classes, you didn't have Top Gas Limited, you had Top Gas, and it was also called into what may, I think, evolved into not super comp, but one of those classes where you ended up doing, if you had a record at a 750 and you were racing somebody with an 8-flat record, he got a half-second start on you.
Yeah.
And I've done that kind of racing, match racing with the cars, extremely dangerous. Because as you're rolling along and you're starting to pick up on the other car in front of you, basically, if something happens to him, you haven't got time. When we're not talking about a 4-lane highway, we're talking about 60 feet lanes back then.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there was people don't realize, if I might digress a little bit, in the racetracks that I raced against, type of thing, it was not a different set that it is. Every day it's a super track. The very first super track was Orange County in '67, and that became the end of the small little mom and pop tracks. When we used to go, let's say Santa Maria at the time, Santa Maria would invite us up, pay us to go up there and race, and that to draw the crowd and have the people come up. What my job as a driver is to get down at the other end and see what I had to deal with, basically, to get the car stopped. Also, too, there was always money up in those tracks for top speed. And that means I would have to run. Another thing people don't realize is the speed traps for early drag racing was 120 feet at the end, 124 feet actually, 66 feet before the finish line, quarter mile, and 66 feet past it. So usually the race ends in the winter at the ET light, 1320. But if you wanted money for top speed, you ran it another 66 feet past it.
Oh, so you're full throttle through the traps.
Yeah.
And another 66 feet, which takes it away at the other end.
Wow.
Holy smokes.
So a lot of these little mom and pop stores
Yeah.
and that stuff were built for a lot of times 150-mile-an-hour cars, not 200-mile-an-hour cars. All right?
Right.
Wow.
So I would go down there, and I used Santa Maria because it was the most interesting one for it. Basically, at the end, there was a guy standing at the end, and I asked him what he did. And he said, well, when you hot cars come up and that stuff, I open the gate up here, and this road out here, I make sure there's no traffic coming.
Wow.
No way.
Right. Oh, yeah, seriously. You know? So I'm kind of looking at what I had to deal with at speed, and I figure I'm 1,000 feet past the finish line type of deal, and now with the speed trap out, and I basically go, okay, I can handle this, right? So first pass down the rack, I want to get the mile-an-hour thing out of my way. So I run it back out the back, what we used to call out the back door. And then I roll along, and I see the guy up ahead of me. I roll on about 50, 60 miles an hour and go through this gate, and I feel a little tug. And that's, it was just maybe the road changed at that type of thing. And get off into the other side, sort of like a parking lot area type of thing. And I get out, all of a sudden, and those parachutes at that time we had was a big ring slot, a ribbon chute. I get out of the car, take my gear off my head, and all of a sudden the parachute gets up. And I'm shocked. And I went over there, and what happened was, as I rolled past the guy, he stepped in behind the car, and the parachute picked him up.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
Oh, my goodness.
That's crazy.
Not crazy, but you got to think about it in my eyes.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, and I'm thinking I've ruined this guy. You know,
Yeah.
he's going to come out of here, with a lot of stuff. And it picked him up into the chute, and that carried him across the street, and then when the car stopped, he dropped on the ground. And then he's fighting his way out. And it wasn't the 2 or 3 slots. These were back ring slots. They had 40 lines.
Wow.
They were the beginning of drag. By the way, I'm the first guy to put a parachute on a dragster in 1957 with Jim Deast.
Wow.
You
Okay.
We had all that kind of stuff. And
Now all shoots are by Deast, basically,
Yeah.
right?
No.
Right.
There's a lot of different colors. Carter was involved later on, and then
But Deast, did it first, right?
yeah, he was one of the first guys. Basically, he was involved with that whole technology came from pulling cargo out of airplanes in Korea.
Wow.
Because they found if they landed a plane in that particular venue and that stuff, they would get incoming. So they had to devise a way of getting the stuff out. So they devised airplanes with the back door. They kind of landed, use a drag chute, as they call it, pull it out, all thing on the skids, tanks, jeeps, anything they needed, and then fly off.
So that's how you guys got the idea for the shoots?
That's where it came from.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, see, people don't ever stop and think, wow, I wonder why they did that. Disc brakes on your cars today came from aircrafts. And what you have at the Second World War, one time in particular, a mechanic for the PA-38 squadron in Africa comes home and basically goes to war surplus and modifies it, put on his car for a Mirage. To stop
Makes
the car.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
All that technology, people don't understand how technically involved the Second World War was. When it started, we had biplane airplanes, and when it ended, we had rocket ships.
Yeah.
In what, a 9-year period?
That's
8-9-year
crazy.
period?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. We had regular gas, where an airplane couldn't fly above 14,000 feet, so they invented ethyl gas.
Wow.
They invented turbochargers. They invented all
Yeah.
those kind of things that put more air in, and then they had the fuel. So all that kind of stuff all happened from flatheads, etc., in the early days, bi-wing airplanes to rocket ships.
Wow.
Well, and Richard, who founded this building,
Yeah.
was an aeronautical engineer. So he designed actuators for the early planes and jets, and he was a World War II bomber. And so there's the progression you're talking about. He
right.
went from World War II to classic cars and racing, and that's what he did.
Yeah, they're all mechanical guys. A lot of
Yeah.
those guys, were all Mirage and Edwards Air Force Base, which was Muroc Dry Lake, dirty and that stuff. And that whole transition of the girls and that stuff. In fact, Judy Thompson, a dear friend of mine, Mickey's first wife, tells me a really great story about how when she met Mickey and they went on their first date, they went racing. And so she's thinking it's going to be this grand thing with stands and that, and they go out to Muir Dry Lake. And she told me, the first thing she asked Mickey, who later became her husband, said, "Where's all the people?" There's no people.
I'm curious to know what was when and where was your last race?
My last race, basically, I was out of drag racing from 71 to 2000. Very much involved with the fundraiser for the Wally Parks Museum because I felt we had to give back. And then basically, I put the word out. Kids had grown up and that I was looking for a ride, some type of ride. A guy named Pit Crew Pete was involved with a gentleman from San Francisco who now lives in San Diego, a guy named John Halstead, who had a nostalgia top fuel car, looking for a driver. And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to put my hand up." You say, right? And my wife and my kids had never been around. They heard stories about me and my driving career and that. So met them, oh my God, it was Thanksgiving, babe? Somewhere around there. We go down to see them. He was his grandfather and his father and him had Western Hoist, a very big hoist company, very much involved with the early hoist that had the big cylinders and gas stations and the gaskets and all that kind of stuff and all that technology. And he had come back into drag racing and bought a nostalgia fuel car. Didn't have a crew or nobody, and we settled on going to drive for him. And I put my crew together, basically hoping people would think I was the important one, not the race car. Because I've driven for people like that who think I'm just a nut you're screwing in and out of the seat. You know, and basically we put the program together. 2001 was I got licensed at the Hot Rod Reunion in 2000. I had to make 6 passes in the car. The first one was a burnout and pull off the burnout back up, and the 6th pass was a full pass through the lights. And signed up on my lights. I had Kenny Bernstein and Ace McCulloch sign me off.
Oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Because at that time also, too, before they used other places, Bakersfield was a warm-up place for the Winter Nationals, the main cars. And Kenny paid me a hell of a compliment. He says, "Bobby," says, "I closed my eyes and listened to what you did, and that stuff. It reminds me of all the times I used to watch you as a kid racing."
So cool.
Wow, that is really
unbelievable,
cool.
right, you know.
So that was at Bakersfield?
That was a Bakersfield
Okay.
license. And our first race was the March meet in 2001. We went to 7 races that year and won 6 of them.
Okay.
I surrendered my car.
Wow.
We
So
were
after
learning.
spending so much time out of the cockpit, basically, you get back
Yeah.
into it. What was going through your head? You probably thinking, does this feel like old times? Didn't skip a beat? I mean, what was going through your head?
Sort of that.
Okay.
I mean, I have a pretty good memory for things. I question them at times. It was basic deja vu, maybe you can call it that. You know, my main focus in that too was my input was my wife and my kids knew nothing about my career, and that was part of my motivation. Plus my love of the sport,
Yeah.
you know, and the people.
Was your ride, did it feel a lot different or feel like the same back in the day? As obviously things advance, technology advances, things.
Well, the train, when I quit the train, it was running, it still holds the record of top gas at about 210, 215, you know, in the 750s, 730s.
That's a fast car.
You know, it was well, when the tire technology came out with the M&H tire, we were at Lions after winning Bristol. We come home in 67 and UDRA race was there. And McEwen was there representing Marvin Rifchin with the M&H tires. I digress again, back again. And he talked us into putting the M&H tires on the train. And the first pass down the dragster racing somebody, the car had the record of like 7.7, 765 at about 190, 191 miles an hour. The car went 201 in a 731.
It just first pass with the M&H's.
Right.
You knocked off 2/10 and got what,
No,
10,
I knocked off almost a half a second.
half a second. Okay.
And it's amazing. I think back at this particular time also, Usually the gains in racing as we made steps forward was on the starting line. Instead of sitting there wasting time after you click the ET light and it's, mile an hour type of deal, your tires are spinning, you're not going anywhere. That's where I perfected pull the brake on control and come out of the smoke ahead type of thing. Well, this time there was no smoke. And the car leaped forward. To this day, I don't remember the first 200 feet.
Wow.
I come out. I could give you an example, somewhat similar like that. Have you ever been in your car and you're kind of like in a semi-hurry and you pull up to an intersection, you look right, you look left, and you go out into the intersection and all of a sudden there's a car there? You ever done that?
I actually have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're in a hurry, you thank God you didn't get hit, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does that tell you? You ever ask yourself, well, how did that happen?
I just assumed it was muscle memory and I wasn't paying attention.
Muscle? What does muscle got to do with your eyeballs?
Yeah, that's true. Right. Yeah. Wow.
It's called reflex.
reflex. Yeah.
Okay. We're all born it. Through another set of circumstances, I got to meet two doctors who won the Nobel Peace Prize with the left and right hemisphere. And they talk about reaction time. The Dr. Zidell, who did some testing with me and some other stuff, basically, is your mind sees it, then you react to it. If your mind doesn't see it, you can't react to it. All right? So the average reaction time for a human being is 1.8 to 1.9 milliseconds. If you don't spend that time looking right or left, your mind doesn't see it, so therefore it's not there. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that answers your question why you didn't spend enough time. So as we get older and our reactions slow down, we have to spend more time at the intersection. All right?
Concentrating.
Not concentrating, just
looking.
natural,
Just,
yeah, just whatever
right.
time that
Yeah,
might be.
right.
Well, the same thing applies to a driver. As we go through different increments of letting the clutch out and going forward, mine has to speed up, sensation slows down. All right? So when I went that speed, I had always running out there many times, slowly but surely going 8 flat, 790s, 770s, 760s, and then you're sitting there stuck on 760 chasing horsepower, all right? And you're starting to make hundreds of passes at 760, 770, 780s, at 200 or 195, 193 and a half, whatever. Then all of a sudden, bang, something happens in the first 100 feet. You get there in a second quicker.
And the brain hasn't got time to.
It's not as they call up to speed.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I've always been a proponent of having a reaction test for your driving test. Makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Makes things a whole lot safer.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the things that I pay attention, and guys like me and what we do in racing, what we do.
No, that you bring up an interesting point because as people who have never drag raced before, drag races is I've loved it since I was a kid, and 1 second is an eternity, right? So if you knock off a 1 second in a single pass, which you weren't expecting to, that's got to be really jarring for your mind, right? I mean,
well, as I said, I woke up, as you might want to call it, 300 feet out, going, how the hell did I get here?
that must have tripped you out quite a bit, I would imagine.
Of course, I couldn't wait till the next time.
To enjoy it, right?
Well, no, to learn more, not to enjoy, to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all learning curves.
Yeah.
All this stuff is learning curve for you. Because you're in a situation, not like on the street, whatever. You're in a situation where you're trying to beat your competitor, pay your bills, and advance to your chosen profession.
This is the part that the argument I make with people all the time, because everybody that hasn't drag raced like in competitively or been in a fast car, they say, well, drag race is boring. You only go in a straight line. It's like, well, then you've never been in a fast car.
Right.
Because things happen at millisecond speed and your reaction, everything matters, right? Everything from the burnout to the launch to the 60-foot, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And this is the argument I like to make is if you've been in a car that scares the living bejesus out of you, you pay attention to that, and you have to actually focus on it in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is to go faster and faster.
Right.
But the faster and faster you go, the quicker and quicker you've got to be. Your mind's got to be on point and all that
You got to
stuff.
get up to speed.
Yeah.
And I know with me, like when I used to drag race, like some of the most exciting times were driving back down and getting your ticket to see what your time was. And the whole time you're sitting
How
there
you
like,
improved.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't do it if it was just repetition.
Exactly.
It was about improving
Yes,
your
yeah.
chosen thrill.
Yeah.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And anybody who hasn't seen drag racing in person, TV doesn't give it proper justice. But
Single
like
dimension.
Yeah.
even like when somebody says the 7 second, cars are doing 3 seconds, 5, 6. You got street cars doing 6s. If you've ever seen something go 9 seconds, 9 seconds is fast. 10
Yeah.
seconds is fast. So 7 seconds back in
Yeah.
the 60s is
Uh-huh.
crazy to me.
Jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
Crazy to me.
Yeah.
And to see that in person, see a car go 7 seconds down the quarter mile, you're just like, it feels like a cartoon. It goes pew pew,
Yeah.
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 And if you don't understand, that's why this is my argument. By the way, first of all, I want to say you're my favorite guest that we've ever had on there. One, as a drag racer who street raced,
Yeah.
who I had to
Yeah.
hide the street racing from my
Right.
parents. I can relate to a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that you're saying here
Yes.
because this
Saw
is
that in your eyes.
yeah.
I know, I love it too. My grandpa and my uncle did Top Fuel drag racing, and so I was around. I never got to go to the track, but I was around the car all the time. I got to see them trailering it to the track.
They never took you?
No, I was younger, and my mom just kind of kept me out of the scene, which is probably part of the reason why I got into it as soon as I turned 17.
Rebel.
Oh, cool.
But it was always just so exciting, and even just like being around the smell of the
Yeah.
car and the gasoline, and like I remember how they used to tell stories. I used to listen to their stories in the background about like, oh, he almost didn't make it, or like, oh, he hit the wall, or like, and I used to just hear these stories, and so I think, and for me too, when I hear you talk about your stories driving like on Bakersfield, I drag raced on Bakersfield probably around the same time when your last race was, and in my head I'm thinking, I am so lucky that I got to drag race on a course or on a track that these great drag racers
Yeah.
have been
I'm
on.
just,
It
I'm
is.
just a blue collar
It's
racer.
it's so
serious.
cool but for somebody who really appreciates the sport, it's just, it feels so special.
Yes.
Yeah, especially now that I have chunks of Irwindale drag strip that are going to be going up on the shelves.
Yeah.
You raced on that track, so it's pretty cool.
It's funny. I've been asking some of my guys if they've ever thought about how many miles they put on the racetrack.
Oh.
It's one of the things that I've talked to Prudhomme and Ivo. I mean, Ivo, just towing his race car when he started touring and that stuff, he could go to the moon and back 3 times
Wow.
in towing.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean,
right.
his first send off with Prudhomme being his grunt. Basically, I use that with reverence. Basically, they didn't come back until November.
Wow.
Driving around, and they raced. They raced Thursday night and 100 miles down the road. They raced Friday night, on and on and on. And 2 times on Saturday, whatever. Touring professionals take in TV Tommy Ivo. Nobody even thinks about all that kind of stuff. And then the different cars that he makes and built and that. But that's the way it was in the beginning of this touring thing. We let it to be professional sport, with the ideas that Wally and Barbara and all the professional people make it a big sport. But you've been to the drag races now.
I don't drag race now. I used to do a lot of drag racing. I've been to
When was the last time you really?
the last time I raced, I think was drag raced was at Pomona, which was probably in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
We were there.
Yeah. I used to go to Pomona a lot, Bakersfield. LACR was like my first track. I used to drag race at.
Pomona.
Um,
No, out there, Lancaster.
in Palmdale.
In Palmdale,
yeah. So yeah, it's been a while for drag racing at least. I moved into other types of racing, but
Like what?
So I started with autocross and then went to time attack on the track.
And now you're doing rally racing.
Now I'm doing rally cross. Yeah.
She's all over the place.
I'm all over the
racing.
place. I get bored. So I move on.
How fast you been in a drag racer?
Well, so when I used to drag race, it was just my regular car. It wasn't like an actual dragster. So
street car.
But yeah. So I think I've actually been faster on the streets than at the track.
It's a lot of people's.
I know
yeah.
it's bad, but
It's
yeah.
okay. You know, my first on a drag strip was my street car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a '53 Corvette
Okay.
I bought from Betty Grable.
Wow.
You know, and basically that was my first drag race car.
Okay.
Through
Yeah.
a set of circumstances in my dad's business where we bought the trucks and that stuff, I ended up with the car. Got lots of tickets.
Yeah, I bet.
Lots of tickets and that type of deal. Had the car for 4 years. It was taken away from me in '58. I had 28 moving violations. In the car.
Wow.
So when you say taken away,
It
was
was.
it hauled away by the cops? Who
No,
took
no,
it?
my dad took it.
Oh,
off.
he
Oh,
took it, okay.
okay.
Yeah, he again, it was a business and that, and you know, eventually I never had an accident, but you would think I should have had an accident.
Yeah.
Type of deal. And it went on that was sold out of Felix Chevrolet out of L.A. to some collector up, I heard, in San Francisco area. And many years later, it was about 25 years ago now, I think right around 2000, the car was found to be the oldest Corvette in existence,
Whoa.
number 3.
Wow.
And it sold at Bear Jackson for $1 million.
Wow.
And they talked about it being the history of being with Betty Grable, and that because factories back then would give movie stars
First crack at it.
not
Yeah,
first crack,
yeah.
given the car.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
A mule.
Good
Right.
publicity,
Yeah,
right?
good publicity mule and that stuff. And she
Yeah.
had done a movie, I think in '51, '52, called How to Marry a Millionaire.
Yeah.
I remember
Marilyn,
that.
Yep.
Marilyn Monroe and
Yeah.
Marilyn
Yep.
McCall.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at that movie, all the cars everywhere were General Motors cars.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, and she got one of the mules.
Do you guys know, like Gabe and Christina particularly, do you guys know who Betty Grable was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like Nose Art, right? Like she was on all the bombers. She's in that famous
she was
Yeah.
a
pose.
lady with
Oh,
her,
okay.
her
She's
legs
like-
were $1
yeah.
million.
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yes.
Yeah, she's like sticking her tush out and everything.
Yeah.
She was on
Yeah.
she was on every B-25
Oh,
and
yeah.
up on the nose.
I'm
yeah.
familiar. I'm familiar with those illustrations.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how much those images are now in social media.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
true,
Marilyn
true.
Monroe, a lot of the
Yeah.
older.
They were very small women, too.
Yeah.
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 Very, very small
Yeah.
women. Well, who was she married to? Remember who she married to?
Not
Come
Errol,
on, Dan.
not Errol Flynn. I couldn't.
Married to a very famous trumpet player by the name of Harry James.
Oh, Harry James, big band.
Big
yeah.
band
Big
era,
band guy.
Yeah.
Type of deal, you know.
Yeah.
So as a 16-year-old kid, you know, my dad come in from the shop in the summertime and goes, you know, you've been working around here. My car at that time was a '49 Chevy sedan delivery. Going to Notre Dame High School, taking 10 guys to school with me.
Wow.
In Burbank for $2 a week.
Wow.
You know, and in the band, the trombone player, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then basically, we went, called up Sean Law Chevrolet. My dad bought all the trucks there instead of in Burbank, and called him up, and Ted Sean Law Jr. and said, my son looking for a Corvette because a Autorama had already just been here. If you've never been to that show, that was to grow up with a Motorama in 53, 4, 5, all that period with the Corvette, then the Nomad, and all those concept cars came about. And we went over there, picked him up, and Sunset Boulevard, went out to Beverly Hills, and he was pulling the back, and here's 5 Cadillacs and this little teeny Corvette with an aftermarket hardtop on it.
Mm.
Had only 1,500 miles on it. It
Wow.
was mine.
Was that the most exciting day of your life? That must have
No.
been one of them. No? You were just like,
it was-
"Eh, it's
at
a
that
Corvette."
time, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
At that particular time,
Up until that moment, that had to have been the highlight, right?
More than a highlight. It was,
Yeah.
you know, it was, I never thought.
A dream come true,
Yeah.
literally.
Literally a dream come true.
Yeah.
My God, you know,
Wow.
I can't go any farther.
Get emotional
Yeah,
thinking
get emotional.
about it.
No, just, you know.
So speaking of that,
But I want to, well, hold on just a minute. I want to tell you, ma'am,
Yeah.
I've known some of the incredible women drivers in this world. And you ladies are built so much better than us guys. You have a better reaction time. You have an
yes,
extremely good nervous system.
yeah,
Mhm.
If we tried to have children, we would self-destruct.
oh yeah,
That's my
we
belief.
die, we die.
Yeah.
Your concentration, your lungs are bigger for better breath control. All the things it takes to drive a car, you're better suited for.
Right. Right.
You know.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So remind me never to race against you.
Yeah.
Christina.
Especially when her and I get together and I talk to her.
Oh yeah, it's
you know,
over. It's
you
over.
know.
Well, it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago about racing, women in racing, and a lot of women in racing kind of feel like they don't want to be put in special classes or their own groups because they feel that with racing, it's one of the only sports where they don't really have, like, the men aren't necessarily competitively advantaged over women. It's very, very, very close. If not, women are maybe a little bit better at it.
Especially in
So,
drag racing.
There's no
Yes.
babies about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The only thing going on in my period of time, if you take a look at the steering wheels of other race cars, that stuff, you didn't have power steering or power brakes. So it took a lot of.
Yes.
You look at those early drivers, the Indians, Lloyd Rubies, all those kind of guys. They were shorter, squatter, a lot of body, upper body, and the wheels were big for leverage.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Even in Formula One racing.
Yeah.
So as progression of the equipment got better, then it became much easier for you ladies to come to the forefront.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Right.
Well, the other thing too, Bob, is I don't know if you've instructed women, but I've instructed women in the shooting sports, and women are such better studies than men. Men are like, I got it, and then they do completely wrong what you
My
told
wife
them.
was a very good trap shooter.
Exactly. I'm a shotgun instructor. Same thing. I've taught some women how to shoot, and they are such better students than men.
Yeah.
It's
Watch
like
out.
you
Women are
give
going
'em-
to take over. I'm
Yeah,
telling
you give them the
They
finer.
already have.
You give them the finer points. They listen. They apply it, and then they're shooting better than you. It's just like, wow. You're right. The reaction time's better. Concentration's better. All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point, Christina. I really like the fact, especially in drag racing and now in drifting and other motorsports events where women are just as competitive, and they didn't have to have a handicap for them. They're just
Yes,
I completely agree with that
Right,
statement, and I
yeah.
you know, even not it's not even a modern thing. Back in the day, but we talked about Shirley Muldowney.
Shirley
back in the day.
Muldowney,
Yeah.
You know, the Danica Patrick. She's been racing forever. You know,
Yeah.
they don't need any special thing. They can
Right.
handle their own.
Well, and also too, with the reason, it's funny. A lot of men sometimes will make comments about me hosting all female race days. Okay, and I think a lot of people need to understand that I don't do that because of a handicap. I do that because women are extremely intimidated, and so it's easier for them to come out and feel comfortable and do what they want to do in an environment where it's all women and they don't have to worry about what men are saying or doing, or so. So it's not necessarily like women themed things are not because of a handicap. It's mostly because of intimidation.
I got the perfect
so.
idea for your next Miss Motorhead event, Christina. At the drag strip with our special guests Bob and Sharon Muravez as honorary instructors to instruct the women on how to get good reaction times and get down the track faster. What do you say?
I think the better instructor would be Jack Beckman.
Okay.
You know, type of deal. Jack is really good for the sport nowadays. He's a great talker. And I remember the first time I met him, I knew his father for a long time because we share the same birthday a year apart. But basically, Jack came up to me and said, "God, I wish I was born in your area." I said, "No, you don't, Jack. You don't want to be. You're in the right place at the right time." He said, "Why is that?" He said, "You guys all grew up." And I said, "Yeah, but see, right now, Jack, you have got about 8 or 9 guys you got to worry about that can put you on the trailer. In my day, you had 60 guys that could put you on a trailer. You know, and they couldn't talk as good as you talk. You know? And that was my claim to fame, too. Why was I able to talk so well? I walked in the door of total strangers and had to perform service into the woman's home.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't go,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I learned, and in fact, Harry Hibbler, Hard Rod magazine editor from the past, paid me a hell of a compliment, saying he was the first drag racer who could talk,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
type of thing, and tell the story. I'm not getting that good at it now as my age is going, but I still try.
No, you're still pretty good, Bob.
Yeah,
We're very impressed. We're very impressed.
Yeah, well, I don't want to impress. I feel the need. I buried an awful lot of my friends in early drag racing, and I have a card that I'll give you guys when I leave about the clock of life that it helped me deal with it 35, 40 years ago. But basically, that's my motivation now, is to talk about the people that I raced against, they raced with me, who are dead and gone. Because I also believe that one never dies until all they touch dies. And these people have touched me, and I'm sure you have all the same experiences with your people that you go about. And your moms and your dads, it's like when you share with me your history of your father in the Second World War type of thing, and the planes he flew in and that stuff. That those people are alive.
Sure.
And that's what this is all
Yeah.
about.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
That's the whole reason we started this podcast.
Yeah.
The stories and
Story type of deal.
You know,
Very
the
true.
one you talk about public appearances. That's how one of the ways we connected with you was
Yes.
you were down at Aero Auto Books and you met Helm,
Yeah.
and that's how this all came about. Shout out to Aero Auto Books, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I talked to
Tina-
Helm yesterday. He wanted to be here for this.
Tina
Yeah.
runs auto books. They're back in the same place it started.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No, that's the same
That's what-
location.
Same location, exact. It all started there, and then finally moved up into the High Red District on Cordova Street on the corner of Magnolia and Cordova. And then it was sold to, oh my God, what was his name? He owned a muffler shop, a header shop, Hooker Headers. I
Hooker.
think it was. You know, I forget the man's name. It's terrible, too, because his nephew, Gene, will get mad at me for his. But then Tina bought it back. Then they raised the rent on her real bad, and an opportunity for the same place to come back, and she's there now.
Oh,
That's
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Their location is really cool. If you guys have never heard of this place, it's called Auto Aero Books, and that's literally what they have: books about and magazines, lots of magazines about automotive stuff and aerospace, airplane stuff or whatever.
Okay.
But it's really cool. It's a throwback. There's the last of its kind.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
it is.
There's nothing like it around, and it's in Burbank. You should check them out. They're really cool. And
Catalina Magnolia
yeah,
on the southwest corner.
right in the heart of Burbank, right
I'm gonna have to
there.
go check
Hardware.
that out.
Yeah.
It is, and she's got incredible books too about a lot of the history. Like a lot of people don't remember the Grand Central Airport, which is only the towers left now over on Sonora and Grandview and the whole shot. Just down the street from Brandt Library, which is old man Brandt has aviation stuff, the airport there. Amelia Earhart, Wilo Post, a lot of the heavy organized aircraft pilots and businesses from the 30s started there. And some of the books about that, and it was written by a guy named Hunter, who, again, a customer of mine, wrote a book about Grand Central and went on with the old air shows of the 20s and 30s there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the books and that stuff. But that was just one of the many books that she carries.
Yeah. They also do car meets there. They have cars and coffee there
Okay,
every so often. You know, and you'll see Jay Leno there
That's
and
cool.
all the Road Kings. That's
I'm gonna have to go
Yep.
check it out.
all the Road Kings based in Burbank. Shout out to the
Yeah.
Road Kings. You know,
Yep.
And that's what you were there for, I think, that day, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you were there for a book signing, and the
Yeah.
Road Kings were there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
Very
like we should
cool.
do an episode from there.
That's what we were
That
saying.
I know
would be
CJ's
cool.
like,
Tina would love you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
That would be
Helm,
awesome.
Helm's been trying to talk to Tina about that, so I think we'll try to work something out
I'll
over
back
there.
you up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Bob.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. No, it's important. It's important. That's the whole reason why we're here, is to preserve the past, because without it, it's that, and then you're gonna lose all these important stories that could shape the future.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of the future, there's something that I'd been meaning to ask you. I know CJ wants to ask you too, especially as far as drag racing is concerned. Where do you see the future of drag? We live in California. Obviously, there's lots of challenges in California with modern
There are a lot of
times.
challenges everywhere.
Yeah. So, where do you see the future of drag racing as it sits right now?
Well, I think the only place we have left now, it looks like it will be run very well, would be Bakersfield.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much farmland there to be bought out because too much growing of the staples that we all need. I can't see, but you never can tell. It all starts with the land being cheap to buy for somebody's house. That's what happened to Lions Drag Strip. I remember when it started moving in there, and then finally they had enough people to complain about the noise. It said, land in California, when it comes to housing and business, is too valuable for a racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't make enough money to support the bill. Same thing. People don't look at it. Remember Ontario Motor Speedway?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
When was it built? It was built in 1979, 78 on Jimmy Carter's 22% interest rate on the money.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So when it was built, it had a debt service on it that it couldn't build, couldn't afford. 22% interest rate
That's crazy.
to build a piece of property that size. And it was next to a steel mill at the time that nobody wanted to live next to, so we thought it would be a great idea. But the interest rate on the debt cost so much money.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know. But Bakersfield, I think, has a point where, especially now that Irwindale's closed and a lot of more input from that gentleman who owned Irwindale, I think owns a small rounding round track outside of Bakersfield,
Yeah, in Kern County Raceway. Yeah.
Kern County Raceway
Yeah.
and that stuff. And I've been told that that certain things are happening to where Bakersfield's going to have a lot more input to it.
Yeah, I think Kern is actually, they just finished laying down a quarter-mile track next to the roundy round. That's a rumor. I can't
No.
confirm that.
I don't think that's going to happen.
That's when Irwindale closed. The guy that was running Irwindale told us that they have a quarter-mile track opening. But like I said, could be a rumor. I can't confirm that, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to believe that a track would open in California.
Yeah.
But
No, because Bakerfield's not. I think when everything's all said and done, you'll find the input of that is so much simpler to put that input toward an existing track,
Yeah.
yeah,
only a few miles down the road, than the liability cost
yeah,
of building a
yeah.
racetrack.
I love Famoso. Famoso's
Yeah.
one of my favorite tracks to race at.
Yeah.
Well,
you know.
when the whole Hot Rod magazine and the Hot Rod reunion started them out, I found that people came from all over the world, and since I was a high-profile guy with the Quincy car, the train, and a few of the other cars and that stuff, I found that people would come there because they've always wanted to come to Bakersfield from Australia, England, Finland, all those places. They heard about the hallowed ground, the holy ground. And that's how I approached it when I talked to people. I said, so much stuff happened here in late 40s, early 50s, 60s, and that stuff as a drag strip, a racetrack.
I didn't realize Famoso was around that long.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
me
it
neither.
actually wasn't. The Smokers and that stuff started the Bakersfield. See, I won in 62. So 59, I think 59 was the first year. And,
Wow.
and
Wow.
the trivia question,
Okay.
who won it? Top Gas?
Yeah.
Tommy Ivo. You know, in his injected Buick car.
Wow.
Wow.
You know. But the Smokers Club with Ernie Hashem and the announcer, oh my God, terrible, I can't remember his name. Anyways, all the smokers were all early hot rodders, you know, and built top fuel cars, Bonneville cars, MRI cars,
Wow.
you know.
Oh, wait, speaking of cars, I just have to ask, what was your favorite car to race?
The car that's going to be restored right now, the Pulsator is being restored as I speak.
Okay.
And it's the dream car that we went. Nye Frank, the engineer and the person who built that car, is Chet Herbert was the sponsor of the car. Chet Herbert Cams.
Yeah.
It's a Streamliner car that I drove. He was partnered with John Peters in the Quincy car and all the development of that. And Nye went on to become, like I told you earlier, with the Breedlove, the Bonneville cars. They all went to high school together.
Wow.
They're Santa Monica.
So is it going to be Pulsator 1?
No, it's the same car.
The same,
being
okay.
restored.
Okay, all right.
Basically, Mike Roth in Indianapolis has the car now and working on it. We've spared a lot of conversations. Pete Eastwood, who is a renowned restorer of a car back to its exact point. And all the car pictures we're finding, and I'm looking for, and my son Michael's helped us finding the archives of Hot Rod Magazine archives. It's well, I sent you the copy of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That the whole great story about the early Streamliner cars being built, and we didn't have any scientific stuff. We just a bunch of hot rodders and throw it out there and deal with it.
And that car's being put together right now?
Yeah.
Oh, when do you think it'll be?
I have no idea, and I don't care. I just hope I live. I will live long. I'm honored enough to live long enough.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope that you'll let us know when that car's done, 'cause
Yeah,
we would love
absolutely.
to shoot that car and just have you back on to talk about the car, because
I was reading the whole history of that. It's
Pretty
a
badass.
pretty badass car.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like two V8s right there,
Oh yeah,
back to
small block
back.
Chevrolet,
Yeah.
400 cubic inch,
Yeah.
100% nitro.
Wow.
You know, don't want to mess around.
That was what,
Racing stuff.
Well, with the two, you thought it'd be what, 1,800 horsepower?
Well, we had, we got
That was the belief that-
Yeah, but you got to understand back then, again, it's technology. Points and ignitions and that. We had a lot of problems with no matter what we did, whether we ran it super lean or super rich, it would always go the same thing, to the point where my owner and partners in the race car and also other people thought I had a rusted pin in my ankle. And I couldn't push it any farther. That's why it always went 201, 203. You know what I mean? You gotta understand, the family of drag racers aren't like other guys. Well, maybe they are, but a lot of kidding, a lot of razzing going on, especially when you go out week after week after week and no matter. So we took the engines out, and I made a bracket. And Tony Capana had a hot rod store down in Compton or somewhere down in the area, Torrence. And it had a dyno. So I built a fixture. We could run both of them. And then Joe Hunt Jr. with the magnetos came there, and we started running the motors on a dyno. And it basically, no matter what we did, as soon as we loaded about 2,300 RPM, the points would start to float. And he had an oscilloscope there, and he said, wow, if I didn't know any better, the points are floating. Turns out that the harmonic balance without a supercharger with a belt and without a harmonic balance in the front of an engine, the dynamics between the motors and the vibration caused the points to float at a certain RPM under a load.
Oh, wow.
Because I know you guys switched the motors at one point, testing it, trying to get
that
it
was
to...
That was at Chet Herbert's dyno. He did that.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
That-
Interesting stuff. Just
it's all the mechanics of the whole thing. Today, that wouldn't happen because of all the pointless ignitions they have out there with a light.
Yeah.
But it would draw another thing into point that I wanted to talk about a little bit. As we chased horsepower and we basically got into faster speeds, certain things would happen with the wind around you. And this was all taken care of a lot by people who ran Bonneville a lot. When you're in Bonneville, you don't have any scientific features in that, although Breedlove did. He did have a Walt Sheehan from the development of the Lockheed Skunk Works set a lot of stuff up on the car that you can measure at certain speeds, a certain amount of load on the tires, all four corners, and that, or the car would kind of get light or heavy, so you could build canards and that around it. In drag racing, we don't have that, but speed is speed. Whether you go 200 miles an hour at Bonneville or 200 miles out of the drag strip, you still have the same air you're pushing through. It doesn't change, whether it takes you that long or 5 minutes to get up to that speed. So you deal with the different things. And I think the transition is be about every 10 to 15 miles an hour when you get up in the 200 to 300 mile an hour zone. Because we have found that as you go from, say, 200 to 250, you have to multiply horsepower. Because the air you're pushing through is sort of like molasses. It gets thicker.
Makes
and all the
sense,
stuff
yeah.
starts to drag on your plane. That it's sort of like I know because I was very much associated with Lockheed and all my customers at Lockheed. When they went from a riveted aircraft to a flush mount aircraft wing, they picked up so much speed, you had other problems to deal with. The same thing with cars, type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We never found out the guy who was stuck in the parachute. Was he badly hurt?
No, he got up. He got him. He was kind of dusting himself off.
Yeah.
And I was running over to him like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he goes, "Wow, that was really interesting."
I was going to say, you gave him the story of his life.
I guess. I hope he talks about as much as we talk
I'm sure
about
he
it.
does.
I mean, how many guys can say they got caught in a parachute?
That's right.
At speed.
At speed.
At speed.
That's right.
I figured we'd wrap it up on that because
Yeah.
Great stuff.
how
Very
many
good.
people get wrapped up in a parachute
That's
on a
right.
dragster, right? All right, Bob, Floyd,
Hey,
thanks
you.
for coming.
Bob,
you.
Floyd, both of you.
Yeah.
Both Bob
Yeah.
and Floyd.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here,
No,
both of
we
you.
appreciate it.
We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Not a problem.
We're gonna have to have you, Floyd, and Bob. Floyd, Bob. I want to call you Floyd. I want to call you
I'll
Floyd,
bring-
Bob.
tell you what.
Junior. Yeah.
No, tell you what. I'll bring my mask next time.
Yeah. yes, please.
And then Floyd can talk for himself.
I love it. I love it.
I feel like we need another show because I had
Absolutely.
so much fun with you today.
It's all about life, though, right?
Yes.
I kind of want to hear stories between you and Don. Look, you guys have dirt on each other. I kind of want to hear that.
Prudhomme?
Maybe we get
Oh, no.
Well, he wrote a book. So,
What's that?
Hey, you want to know about Don?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to know about Don, find his book.
Okay.
I mean, when we did the book signing at Tina's Play, all the books and that, I took it home. I couldn't put it down because of the whole situation with his family, his father, and all that kind of stuff. His early days, you know, it was Road Kings.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll
I
have
mean,
to
there
pick
was
that
Oh,
up.
we have to look at
Maybe
it.
Tina has a copy.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, I've on
Yeah.
the Road Kings and that stuff. It just,
Yeah.
you know, and stories when he protested me one time because I was 3 cubic inches over my class limit. We had drag race, and that night at the club meeting, how dare a club member challenge the second club member and take his trophy away, because I was illegal for the class in AA gas dragster, or A-gas dragster at San Fernando. And he was having his motor in Tommy Ivor's old car that he bought, or who knows. But anyways, so basically the whole thing, that story you might want to talk about, the club was going to throw him in the Los Feliz fountain for daring to.
Wow.
Yeah. So we all marched down there, because you understand, the married guys would go home to their wives, and the bachelor guys would go to the movies on Sunday night, right? So we all marched down with our cars and that stuff, down Los Feliz fountain at Riverside in Los Feliz. And Ivo and McCurry and Skip Torgerson and them all got put on up to the fountain, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, Muravez, help!" So I reached up there, got close, and they dropped him and threw me in. And I kind of skipped off the water, got up, and I saw Ivo, the instigator, and basically ran after him, soaking wet, tackled him on the walkway, rolled him over, and had got him and laid down. I said, and I pointed at my chin, and I had my arm cocked, and I said, "Take your best shot."
Love it. That's awesome.
So you were faster than him outside of the cockpit too. It sounds like if you caught him, right? And you were wet at the time. So, all right.
Well, adrenaline rushes. You've had adrenaline rushes.
Oh yeah, I've had a few of those.
Okay, well, you seem to conquer a lot of things in
Yeah.
that. But that was just one of the things of the early days of drag racing with car clubs.
Maybe
That's
that's the next show is the Road Kings. We get all the Road Kings
The Road
together
Kings.
and
There you
have I'm sure there'll be all kinds of interesting stories that come out of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we're losing them too, the original members.
Yeah.
We only have one left,
Wow.
All right.
original members.
Wow.
But that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing
Absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thanks for coming up. We appreciate great stories.
Yes,
Great
thank
stories.
you.
Yeah. All right. Don't forget, like, follow, subscribe. We got our YouTube channel, and if you like what we're doing here, send us a note. Tell us what we should be doing. Where should we be going?
The tip line.
The tip line. Yeah.
Go to our website, the tip line,
That's it.
right?
Yes.
And subscribe. Subscribe.
Subscribe,
All right. Thanks for watching, and we will see you west of Tulsa.
Wow. Hell of a deal.
All right. We're out.
Love it. Love it. Love it.